Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Station 11 finale. A great finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I thought it was kind of interesting that we got a conclusion with, in many different regards, even circling back and getting a conclusion with Miranda, which I didn't think we would. But I do like that this series is so reciprocal, that everything connects. There's so many connections, and the show does such a good job of making it seem like, all right, this is this person's story, and it does, like, all these other stories connected, and it makes, like, I thought as much as we would get is knowing that Miranda obviously wrote Station 11 and how much of an impact that had on both Kirsten and Tyler and what that kind of led to all of this. But obviously, her getting in contact, her actually talking to Clark one last time, I was like, oh, interesting. Like, while he was at the airport, he ended up talking to her about everything. And obviously, she's, wanting to see the sun one more time, because we find out, like, she gets sick, so you're like, oh, so she's not alive right now. Like, well, because most people, like, it's a 99% thing. Like, if you got sick, you died, so it's like, damn. We found out, actually, like, she lost her entire family all at once, and it's heartbreaking to find out, like, what the story was. She's like, her entire family died at once. Basically, like, it was during a Hurricane Hugo, their house flooded, a live wire hit it and killed everyone. She was on the countertop drawing at the time, so that's the only reason why she survived. And that's why I think for her, when she was talking to Jim, she was like, she's glad that her family's gone. I guess it's because, like, if they were here, they'd be going through all this and she'd be scared, because at least she already knows her family's gone. She doesn't have to worry about that loss. She hasn't to be scared, because, like, everyone else has someone they've already potentially lost, or they're in the process of losing. So it's not saying it's I don't know if it's necessarily better, but it's like that wound is already there for her, so she doesn't have to be worried about it. It's just like, my family's already been gone for a long time, so I don't have anyone I have to necessarily worry about. I thought it was interesting, that line where she was basically like, she talked to Clark, because Clark was like, hey, I ran into had dinner or whatever with Arthur like a month ago. And she's like, actually, that's actually what made him reach out to me, is because he talked about talking to you opened his eyes. I'm like, yo, that's interesting. So once again, it all plays out, it all happened for a reason, because she was saying, like, it was at the wrong place in the wrong time, but it's like, no, everything, I guess, in a sense, if you want to look at it, everything happened for a reason and happened in the way it was supposed to, maybe. But the fact is that Clark's conversation that we got context for, was that last episode, or was that episode 8? That might have been, that we got context about, like, Clark's conversation with him, with Arthur, that led him to reach out to Miranda, which that in turn made her finish the last 2 pages of her book. And obviously, it's just like, sadly, they made plans and just it fell through. But hearing, like, oh, he was like, Clark was like, maybe it all happened for a reason. The fact is that he's like, I'm here with Elizabeth and Tyler, and Miranda takes it upon herself. It's like, no, I'm gonna make sure they're okay. So she, with Jim's help, ends up contacting the pilot, want to make sure that they're okay. And even she was like, interesting. The hurricane that killed my family was like Hugo, and the pilot's name is Hugo. It's just interesting. And so she ends up calling him up and convinces him that she's the reason why those people never got off the plane. It's not just because of what was happening in the airport. It was like, no, because she reached out to him. It's like, right, those people in there deserve a shot. Like, no one in there is sick, because Miranda realized, like, right, there's like only like one entrance into that place. So, like, no one's really going to get there. So as long as everyone's clean and no one's sick, like, it should be fine. And it's like, sadly, it led to this place being the way it was, and Clark running it the way it ran for like 20 years. But maybe it was all for a reason. Maybe it all happened for a reason. It was meant to be this way. But she's the one that convinced Hugo to keep everyone on a plane, because it's like, right. Because he was like, but no one on this plane deserves to die like a caged animal. It's like, no, but those people. And he was like, they're on the countertop. She's like, right. This is their chance to live. Like, this is our way to help so many people. And I wonder, on some level, was it her trying to, like, I think on some level it's because she, knew, like, it's like, right, Clark, because she never really stayed connected with people, because even Clark was like, oh, like, you know, he's like, when you and Arthur got together those first few months, happiest time in my life. And he's like, I wish we stayed connected. She's like, I'm not the staying connected type. Like, I think a lot of that kind of was always a little awkward for her. And I think for her, it was almost like keeping Clark, Elizabeth, and Tyler alive was kind of like her way to kind of give back, like her chance to help make sure that, like, right, her family's going, but at least keep people that were close to Arthur alive to some extent, you know? It's like, maybe this is why I'm here now, is to give them this opportunity. So we do see later on, though, that she dies. But I thought it was interesting to know that the spacesuit and everything is stuff she's seen since she was a little girl. This has been almost like Station 11 is almost like her life's work to an extent. I think it's a culmination of just like what she was drawing at the time, and just like getting that across, like the emotions and just all the feelings, and just like her exit, like her death, like being symbolic, because it's like her with Dr. 11, and just like, I don't know, almost like this peaceful tranquility, you know? And so it's interesting, you know, Clark is like, oh, those people up there are brave. And it's like, he will never know what Miranda did, you know? And that's the thing, like, you know, we as the audience will, but they will never know what happened and why it all went down that way. But present day, obviously, you have Kirsten shifting things because she is going to do the play, but her main reason to do the play is because she talks to Elizabeth. It's like, right, because Elizabeth's like, yeah, the quarantine's over and now you get to perform, and it's like, no, we want to take Sarah and leave. It's like, yeah, you'll get to her like after the performance and everything, you guys get to go, like the doctor will be here by then and stuff like that. But Kirsten's like, all right, we'll do the play, but I want you to basically play Hamlet's mom, because you need to talk to your son. It's like, my son made me think he burned himself alive, and then he took that hope away from me. And it's like, yeah, but your son is alive. He ran away. You got someone from before. Not every like, it's like, oh, she was like, what did you lose? It's like, because at the end of the day, the person you lost was your son. He's back in your life. He came back. He's here. No one gets that opportunity to meet the people they knew from before. Like, it's not something that happens. You have that opportunity. Basically, don't squander it. And so Kirsten used this entire play as a means of healing them, which obviously the play kind of healed people too, because even Sarah was like, yeah, it might seem crazy, but, you know, for a little bit, just a tiny bit of time, people get to forget their issues and everything. I mean, I think that's the purpose of entertainment in general. Just a little bit of escapism, which ties into the whole, like, right, I know damage, then escape, you know? Everyone knows damage. Everyone needs an escape from, you know, to escape that damage. Every character in this, the very, like, it all flows so nicely that you're like, part of me wonders, like, am I overthinking it, or is that just, like, it just seems like it fits too perfectly, like, with the overarching theme of just Station 11 itself, the novel that she wrote, but also just the grand scheme of just the story in itself, you know? It just all seems too reciprocal. I keep using that word, but it all fits so nicely that it's like, no. It can't just be me overthinking. It's like, no, it has to be intentional from every little detail has to be intentional in that regard for everything to fit so perfectly. She's actually the one going to be directing things this time, Kirsten, instead of it being Elizabeth, and setting up the play and everything, getting Tyler his lines and getting him prepared for Hamlet. And I even love that line later on where Tyler was like, why are you doing this, Kirsten? And she's like, stabbing you didn't work. Because she's like, right, I tried to stab you because I thought you were dangerous. I wanted to protect people, but now, like, Kirsten knows who he is and now realizes, like, right, like, all that you've done, like, yes, the undersea and stuff like that, but it's also like, right, you've taken in so many children who've had no one, so she does see, like, the good in him, especially knowing, like, right, your dad, like, I loved him, he loved me, he took care of me, he was always so nice to me, especially when they never got into it, but apparently she, you know, once they hinted to, like, right, her family situation at home wasn't great. We never got to find out, like, what that meant exactly, but that's why I think she latched on to Jeevan, to Frank, to Arthur, now the Traveling Symphony, just because, like, she found one family after the other, to either compensate for what she lost or to kind of fill a void that maybe was never fully filled before with her own family. I don't know. You know, that could be me just reading too much into it. But, and I do like that Jeevan shows up because he's the doctor. And so he's there just to check on, initially he's there to check on Clark, because Clark ran into the Museum of Civilization and burned his arms trying to in the fire to try and put it all out, but it's all gone. Which, to be fair, even later on, it's like even Elizabeth was like, yeah, she wasn't a fan of that place. But regardless, I think it's fascinating that. Yeah, he's there to check on Clark, and lo and behold, who's also in the room, and it's like, oh, who are you? And it's like, Sarah. It's like, what are you feeling, Sarah? She's just kind of like wanting. She's like, that I'm ready, and he's like, it's okay, you can let go. We're not alone. And the thing is, Sarah died not knowing it, but it's beautiful in its own regard of like, right. You know, because last episode, inside of his head, Frank was like, don't worry, she'll find someone. And she did. She ultimately ended up finding Sarah and the traveling symphony. And it's like, it's that moment, those characters, Jeevan will eventually find out, but Sarah will die not knowing, like, right, like, it's almost like you took in the little girl I was looking after I lost sight of, like, you took care of her. You made her part of your family. She found her place because of you. And, you know, and that moment, like, there's so much there that we as the audience get, but it's like, and the sad thing is that they didn't know in that moment. But at the very least, it was almost beautiful for him to be by her side when she died, you know? So, obviously, you know, despite everything, Kirsten's going to keep the performance going and she's not going to tell anyone because they won't perform their best if they know the truth. But I did love that, obviously, Clark is still like, no, we're not doing the performance and stuff like that. But then it's like, Kirsten is like, right, this is the only way to help. It's like, but why? Like, yeah, she's like, I tried to kill him. He is dangerous, but, and then she shows them the book. It's like, wait, did you get this from Tyler? It's like, no, I got it. It's like, wait, this is Miranda's book. It's like, yeah, I got it from Arthur. And it's like, and she brought up who she was in King Lear. And she's like, we met backstage. And Clark is like, you're Kiki. And it's like, right. So it's like, I think in that moment, Clark was almost like, wait, it all worked out. Like, wait, you're here. And it's just kind of like, yeah. She realized, like, she can actually help him. She can actually make things better. She can heal some of that damage by giving them an outlet, giving them an opportunity. Just talk. You're here. You have this opportunity, and the play represented that, an opportunity for them to speak. And even partway, you know, Clark even decided to step into the role he was playing too. And obviously, I thought it was kind of messed up, but Alex gave him a knife, I guess, to do what he needed to do, like, to make it real. Like, whatever he decided to do was, you know, in that moment, it's like, use the feelings he had and put them into play and now make it really good. And in that moment, he had the knife on Clark and he just dropped it. Because it's like, no. Because, like, Clark is like, we loved him too. Like, I get it. You're in so much pain at the time. Everything. Your dad's death plus that guy. It's just, you were going through a lot and we couldn't really help you then. And even talking to his mom. But like I said she wasn't that much of a fan of the Museum of Civilization, and I'm assuming that's a byproduct of, right, it was just a constant reminder of the past, of what was gone, what was lost, and at the time she thought her son was lost, so it was just a reminder of that. So, but he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I burned down that museum and stuff like that. She's like, if you had asked me to go, I would have. It's like, why didn't you? And he was like, because you wanted to stay. And I thought it was kind of this beautiful moment of just kind of like, it's like, well, kind of ask me now. And he's like, Mom, will you come with me? And she's like, yes. And then them hugging. And it's just like, they are in a process of healing. And even nearby, Alex kind of looking. And I don't know if that's the end result she wanted, or just, I guess she's happy to see that the prophet's happy, I guess. It's like, oh. And obviously, as I thought, the museum getting lit on fire did draw out all of the undersea. They all showed up with those mines and everything. And ultimately, Kirsten talked to Haley, and it almost came full circle too for her, where it's like, right, she's reaching out to this little girl just like Frank and Jeevan did for her. And I almost kind of thought it'd be sweet if she was able to kind of go with the Traveling Symphony, and that kind of be like, oh, like the circle kind of continues, which it still could, but I thought that was kind of a beautiful moment. Because sadly, she had to, it was like Haley showing up was just after she had told the Traveling Symphony about Sarah's death. I thought that was so interesting. I also love that line between Miles and Clark, where he was basically like, oh, like, you kept us safe. He was like, yeah, you were always good at the big speeches. You drew me. And he was like, yeah, I might have been good at the big speeches, but you're the one that turned the lights back on. So kind of like, yeah, like, I might have been able to give the big speeches, but you're the one that actually kept stuff running. You were the one that actually kind of did your job. I was just the one kind of sparking people along with my words and stuff like that, essentially, is what he was kind of getting at. So I thought that was such a interesting moment between them. Obviously, the symphony saying their goodbyes to Sarah by singing that song, which was beautiful. But then in that moment, because they had just they missed each other just by a hair. I was like, are we really going to make it? There's like, no. There's no way you're going to make it so that these two don't run into each other. And then in that near the end, I was like, there's only like a couple minutes left in the episode. And then the song, like, they stare at, he's like, almost like, wait, what? They're both looking at Ghost. And then they kind of just like walk towards each other and they hug each other. No words said. Just 20 years, well, 19-ish years, just like no words, just hugged each other. And I thought it was beautiful. And it's just kind of like, you're alive, you're okay. You know, just what Kirsten had said before, like what they had in that moment too. No one gets that. Tyler, Clark, and Elizabeth were lucky to have that. So, but now she was fortunate enough to have that as well. So I thought that was beautiful. We do see that later on. Well, Alex is deciding to stay behind because she made that clear that she wanted to stay before. And I thought it was kind of interesting because Kirsten left her knives behind, and I'm assuming she gave them to Alex. Well, because she had left them with Alex. She's like, right, you're right, I don't need these anymore. So, obviously that was before she ran into Jeevan, so it was almost therapeutic in many different ways of just kind of finally putting down the knives and not always being so overprotective and just always on guard. This changed a lot for not just Kirsten but Tyler as well. Like, once again, like, I think it was a very in totality, this episode was just very therapeutic all around. That's symbolism, you know. But I love that. Obviously, Elizabeth leaves with Tyler, and Haley gives him the book. It's like, right, because Elizabeth, Kirsten doesn't need it anymore, and it's obviously, well, granted, I think it was Haley that took it from her, but it's almost like, right, them having the book now, it gives them something to kind of hold on to. It's not just his story. He gets to share it with them like he shares all the other stories, this prophecy. And we do see at the end, they drop the mines, so they're not, you know, it's like, right, it's not about destroying before anymore, you know? And I thought it was beautiful how, like, even Clark was like, what the fuck? And when you see, like, how many children, it's like, I mean, he's been doing this for a decade now, because they were saying, like, yeah, like, he's been basically building out the Undersea for the past decade, and it's like, look at all these children that are basically his family. So Elizabeth's going with her son, you know, it's like, right, don't be strangers, you're always welcome here. So it's like they're keeping their doors open. Obviously, Jeevan leaves with Kirsten and the Traveling Symphony. I love that Enrico's character decides to join them as well. And I love that it's Home Dude, the newer guy who ended up, like, he's like, nah, come on, you're, mountain bike, right? He's like, yeah. I thought that was dope. But obviously, like, you know, he talks a little bit about his family. He's like, yeah, the benefits of being on an island, they can't really run anywhere. But obviously he talked about, you know, it's scary, like, you know, scary with kids, you know, it's like, you know, kind of don't know what you're doing. You kind of get angry at them. You're scared. And Kirsten was like, I was never scared with you, Jeevan. He was like, I was scared. He's like, until I met this girl, that little girl was supposed to walk home. And he was like, it was cold. And I love that line of, you walked her home. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I wish they could stay together a little longer, but it's like, right, despite everything, we found each other, and it's like they hug each other, and it's like, right, there goes your family, and she's like, yep. So it's like he's going to get back to his, but she's like, right, I'm get the airport. We're going to add the airport to the will, because they also brought up the fact is that this is their first time ever going off wheel, because I think for her it's like, right, we need to do something a little different because they're not the same. Things have changed. It's like, right, it's been 20 years. It's like Kirsten was so, because it's almost like meeting Jeevan. Like she was set on this path. Like I brought up previously, her always wanting to be on the move was a byproduct of everything with Frank and Jeevan. It made her think like, right, I can't stay in one spot for too long, especially because when she built on a performance, it was a day too late to leave and Frank died. So I thought it was like, but I think this kind of gave her an opportunity to not be so stuck on her cycle anymore, that they can break it a little bit. And it's like, right, she's like, we'll put the airport on our route and bring your family next year. It's like, he's like, yeah, like, don't worry, they already know all about you and your story. Like, I wonder, it's like he's specifically referencing Station 11, but it's like, yeah, he told Frank, Key, and his other kid, and I was like, oh, it's beautiful. And he's like, goodbye, Kirsten. She's like, bye, because she never got to say goodbye to anyone. She was never very good at it, so she finally was. And just beautiful and symbolic how they both go down different paths, and like that's where they have been for the past 19 years. But it's like, right, we know each other's okay. We know how everything turned out. It's okay, you know? And I love it. I'm like, I think it's a sweet ending, because I like that it isn't like, this show was never about like, oh man, this band. It was the event, but it was a very like everyone's stories and how connected they were, and just I think like once again everything worked out the way it was meant to, because if things hadn't played out the way they are, we wouldn't have the resolutions that we have right here at the end. So I think in all honesty it was a beautiful ending. I'd love to kind of, look into it. Once again, I'm not the biggest reader, but I'd be curious to find out, some of the differences between some changes and how much was the same between the book and this, because someone did let me know a couple episodes back, the whole bouncing around time, like the way the show isn't just for the show. Like that is something from the books as well, apparently. So, well, not the books, the book. So, but I just thought it was just like a beautiful, like, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, is this going to end on a bummer? But it's like, no, like, everyone walked away with their families, whether it be Tyler, whether it be Kirsten, whether it be Jeevan. The fact is that there was here, like, because even, Clark has Miles, and it's just like, yeah, they've lost a lot, but what this means for these characters going forward, I think that's just something you can kind of fill in on your own. But I'm also curious, like, who got the other copies? Well, we know Kirsten got one. We know Tyler got one. And Miranda had a copy on herself. There were still like 2 other copies unaccounted for. Probably just maybe those. Maybe she probably had the 3 last copies. Like she probably might have had them with her. But like I said, I think this was just a beautiful ending. Just a great story and series all along. Because I wasn't sure fully what to expect, because I never watched the official trailer, so I only watched the teaser, so I wasn't fully sure what to expect from this show, and I don't know if blissfully, like, surprised would be the right word, but, like, it was so good, just because it's such an interesting story, and obviously the timing is kind of interesting, but still, I think, once again, it's not even just, it's about this thing that happened and how it changed so many people's lives, but how it all worked out and played. It's a very character-driven story, so obviously it's not your typical post-apocalyptic type of situation of like, man, people versus... It's like, that was an element here and there, because people are going to be shitty, but also it's like, right, it could still be an opportunities for surprise reunions and growth and healing. I think it's kind of a byproduct of it all, so... I thought it was just regardless, through and through, I think it's a beautiful ending, so... Obviously, cast and crew, I wish them the best on their future endeavors. Because this is clearly a one and done. There is no season 2 for this. It's based on the book. This is telling the entire story of the book. They told the story they wanted to tell. I mean, I guess the argument could be like, you could tell more stories in this world if they wanted to, but it seems like it's a surefire one and done. So... But yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.